The harmonious citadel floated in the quiet space between stars. It was a place of smooth, curved walls and soft, glowing light. There was no shouting here, no running. Sounds were gentle and movements were slow and careful. This was the school of the Galath, a very old and wise species. Their job was to teach new species how to be peaceful members of the galaxy. They believed that all conflict came from a failure of understanding, a sickness of the spirit that could be healed with the right training. Instructor Kale moved down a hallway. His long limbs made his steps graceful. His skin had a faint silver sheen. He felt proud of his work. He had taught many species, the loud Gorvans, the fiery Trell, to find peace. Today he faced his newest challenge, humans. The human group stood out. There were 20 of them, gathered in a comm room. Their bodies were not all the same size or shape. Their clothes were simple gray suits given to them by the Citadel. They did not look dangerous. They looked tired. Kale observed them with his mind as much as his eyes. His psionic senses reached out, feeling for their emotional energy. He found only a muddled cloud. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was a kind of blurry wall. "Welcome," Kale said, his voice a soft chime in their translator implants. "Your first lesson is empathic resonance. You will learn to feel the emotional state of another and reflect back calm. This is the first step to true peace." A human male named Jiho listened. His dark eyes watched Kale carefully. On Earth, Jiho had been a strategist for complex projects. He liked to understand how systems worked. This place was a new system. He noted the gentle light, the quiet, the way Kale seemed to glide. Everything here is designed to remove sharp edges, he thought. Another man, Min-Su, stood with his arms loosely at his sides. He was a man who fixed things, engines, machines, broken tools. He felt useless here. There was nothing to take apart, nothing to put back together. He just felt a low, constant headache from the strange, sweet-smelling air. The women, Yuna and Hannah, stood together. Yuna was small and had the strong, lean body of a person who used to fly through the air in gymnastics. Here she was told to sit still. Hannah had the focused look of a scientist. She was trying to figure out the biology of the Galath, but she had no tools, just her own eyes. "Put on the resonance bands," Kale instructed. The humans picked up the smooth, silver bands and put them around their heads. The devices were cool and light. "The exercise is simple," Kale said. "I will project a basic emotion, frustration. You must clear your mind and use the band to send back a wave of calming peace. Your band will glow blue when you succeed." Kale closed his eyes. The humans felt it then. A sudden, clean feeling of annoyance, like a single sour note in the quiet room. It was not their feeling. It was placed inside their minds. Jiho tried to do as told. He tried to clear his mind and think of peace. He thought of a quiet lake. His band flickered with a weak gray light, then died. Min-Su scowled. The feeling of frustration felt like being told a tool was missing. His instinct was to fix the problem, not to send a calming feeling back. His band stayed dark. Yuna took a slow breath, like she used to before a routine. She pictured a still forest. For a second, her band glimmered pale blue. Then she thought of the quiet before a big performance, which was not really calm but focused energy. The band flashed red and let out a soft, disappointing chime. Hannah was fascinated. The emotion was a tool. She wanted to examine it to see how it worked. To the band, this was not calm. It was curiosity which registered as mental noise. Her band also darkened. All around the room it was the same. The human bands flashed dull colors or red or nothing at all. The other alien students, a plant-like being who shimmered with gentle green light, and a small furry creature whose band glowed a steady, perfect blue, watched with what seemed like pity. Kale opened his eyes. His calm face showed a tiny line of disappointment. "Again," he said, the chime in his voice slightly sharper. They tried for hours. The humans grew more and more tired. Their heads ached. The frustration emotion began to feel less like a note and more like a physical pressure behind their eyes. "It is not about trying harder," Kale explained, his patience thinning. It is about letting go. You must quiet the parts of your mind that want to fight, to analyze, to control. These are the predator parts. You must soften them. Min-Soo looked at his hands, the hands that could rebuild an engine. Predator parts? He just wanted the headache to stop. When the session ended, the humans walked slowly back to their living quarters. Their rooms were as soft and quiet as the rest of the citadel. Felt like being wrapped in cotton. In the common room, Jiho spoke first, his voice low. Did anyone else feel like you were trying to breathe with only one lung? Yuna nodded, rubbing her temples. It's like the calm it wants isn't my calm. My calm is active. This is just empty. Hannah leaned forward. I think it's biological. The bands and the training. They're for a Galath brain. Their predator center and their calm center must be separate. Ours aren't. Min-Soo grunted. So we're broken. Not broken, Jiho said, looking at the soft, unbreakable wall. Different. The system is built for them. We don't fit. That night, as the citadel lights dimmed to a soothing night glow, the humans lay awake. They were not angry or violent. They were deeply, utterly fatigued. The training wasn't teaching them peace. It was asking them to abandon a fundamental part of how they thought, a part woven into everything from solving a puzzle to feeling happy about a friend's success. They were trying to perform brain surgery on themselves with blunt tools. An Instructor Kale, watching their failed scans, simply noted in his log, species, human, designation, low potential, high resistance to pacification protocols, a regrettable but manageable flaw. He saw failure. He did not see adaptation. He did not see the silent, stubborn work of a mind refusing to break. He only saw the wall. The days settled into a weary pattern. The humans moved through the citadel like ghosts in a bright, quiet world. They ate the bland, nutritious food. They sat through lectures on galactic history where war was spoken of as a sad, ancient disease. They failed exercise after exercise. Instructor Kale's disappointment was a quiet, constant pressure. He no longer called on them during group sessions. The other students had learned to ignore them. The humans were the silent, stumbling ones in the back. The ones who could not feel the right way. But in their private moments, a change was starting. The frustration turned into a quiet kind of focus. They began to watch not just with their eyes, but with their whole minds. It was Hannah who made the first real observation. They were in a sensory integration chamber, a room that could create harmless but realistic illusions. The lesson was about sharing a feeling of safety. A Galath student would create an image of a peaceful meadow, and the others would join their minds to it, making the shared image stronger and more detailed. When it was a human's turn, the image would be weak, fuzzy. It would fall apart. Hannah was paired with Yuna. The room formed an illusion of a calm, shallow sea. The goal was to add the feeling of warm sunlight. Focus on the memory of sunlight, Kale instructed from the side. The warmth, the comfort. Send that to the shared space. Hannah closed her eyes. She thought of sunlight, but her memory was not of lying still. It was of sunlight through trees in a forest, of tracking the path of a rare butterfly for her studies. Her mind was active, searching. The illusion flickered. Yuna, trying to receive the feeling, pictured sunlight on her face before a competition. It was a good feeling, but it was tied to adrenaline, to waiting for a starting signal. The illusion shivered and turned a sickly gray. A soft, failing tone sounded from the room. But in that moment, Hannah noticed something. Just as the tone sounded, she felt a tiny, sharp pain behind her eyes. It was gone in a flash. She saw Yuna flinch, just a little. After the session, Hannah pulled Yuna aside in their common room. Did you feel that? Right at the end. A little pain. Yuna nodded slowly, like a static shock. Inside my head. I think it's feedback, Hannah whispered. The system gives a tiny psionic shock when we fail. A negative reinforcement. The Galath probably barely notice it. But our brains, our neural pathways are different. It stings. Min-Soo overheard them. He had been trying to fix a broken cleaning drone with his fingers, taking it apart and putting it back together just to feel useful. So it doesn't just say we're wrong. It punishes us. It's not a punishment for them, Jiho said, joining them. He had been watching Kale for days. It's a correction, a gentle nudge. But for us, it's like being nudged with a needle. He looked at the others. We're not weaker. We're more sensitive to it because the signal is going to the wrong place. This was the key. The training was a language. The Galath spoke it fluently. The humans were not just speaking it badly. They were hearing it wrong, and their responses were wrong. The pain was a clue. The next day they had a new drill. It was called a harmony lattice. They wore full psionic helmets now, heavier bands with more sensors. They stood in a circle with 5 other alien students. The goal was to pass a simple emotion, contentment, around the circle, making it stronger each time. Kale initiated the emotion. The plant-like being next to him received it, added to it, and passed a warmer, richer feeling to the next student. It moved smoothly around the circle. The air seemed to hum with quiet, happy energy. Then it reached Minsu. The feeling of contentment washed over him. It felt like the satisfaction of a job well done. His mind instantly went to the memory of fixing his uncle's old ground car. Hearing the engine purr to life after weeks of work. It was a deep, real contentment. But it was active. It was tied to solving a problem. The helmet sensors screamed. A sharp, hot pain lanced through Minsu's skull. He gasped and stumbled back, breaking the circle. The shared emotion shattered like glass. The other students made soft, unhappy sounds. Their perfect exercise was ruined. Kale let out a sigh. You forced it, he said to Minsu. You tried to control it, to shape it with your will. You must only receive, soften, and pass it on. You must be a clear pool, not a pump. Minsu sat on the floor, his head pounding. But through the pain, his mind, the fixer's mind, was working. A clear pool, not a pump. That evening, the humans met again. Minsu described the pain, more intense this time. It's like a circuit breaker, he said. When we send the wrong thing back, it overloads and zaps us. But what is the right thing? Yuna asked, frustrated. I try to be empty, but I can't. You're never empty, Jiho said quietly. None of us are. Even when we sleep, our minds are busy. That's what he doesn't understand. Our predator parts aren't a separate room we can close. They're the foundation of the house. They're in everything. Hannah's eyes lit up. Then we don't close the room. We redecorate it. We give the system what it wants to see, but we use our own furniture. They looked at her, not quite understanding. The helmet wants a calm, peaceful signal, she said. It doesn't care where it comes from, right? It just reads the output. What if we find a memory that feels calm to us, but also satisfies our own brain's wiring? A memory that uses our whole mind, but in a peaceful way. They began to experiment quietly in their rooms. They couldn't turn on the helmets, but they could practice the feeling. Yuna didn't think of a still forest. She thought of the moment on the balance beam, perfectly centered, every muscle aware but not tense. The world narrowed to a line of wood. It was intense focus, but it was also a kind of peace. Jiho thought of solving a difficult logic puzzle, the moment all the pieces clicked together. It was a victory, but a quiet, internal one. Hannah thought of watching a complex ecosystem through a camera, understanding how every part connected with no desire to interfere. It was deep observation. Minsu thought of the silent, rhythmic work of polishing a carved piece of wood, feeling the smoothness appear under his hands. It was making something whole. They weren't trying to be empty pools. They were trying to be deep, still lakes, and a lake is full of life underneath its calm surface. They were building a secret bridge between their nature and the Citadel's demands. They did not know if it would work, but the constant, failing pressure had stopped. They had found a problem to solve. And in the solving, the heavy fatigue began to lift just a little. They were no longer just being pushed. They were pushing back. Quietly, invisibly. The change was slow, like a plant turning toward a hidden light. The humans stopped trying to follow the Galath way. They began to practice their own. It was not discussed openly, but a quiet understanding passed between them in glances and nods. The next Harmony lattice drill arrived. They stood in the circle again, the heavy helmets on their heads. The emotion to be passed was serenity. Kale watched the humans with detached patience. He expected more failure, more broken connections. The emotion began its journey around the circle. It reached Jiho. Instead of trying to receive the alien feeling of serenity, Jiho did something else. He held his own memory ready. He focused on the logic puzzle, the clean, perfect click of the final piece. His mind was active, solving, but the feeling it created inside him was one of smooth, quiet order. He took the wisp of the Galath emotion, let it wash over his memory, and passed forward what the system expected. A clear, calm signal. His helmet glowed a steady, soft blue. The plant-like being next to him gave a slight, pleased shiver as it received the signal. The emotion moved on. Kale's silver eyebrows lifted slightly. A fluke, perhaps. Next was Minsu. The feeling came to him. He braced for the pain, but instead he dove into his memory of polishing wood. The rhythmic motion, the feel of grain becoming smooth under his fingertips. It was a deep physical focus. It was not empty. It was full of purpose. But the purpose was simple and complete. He passed the feeling on. His helmet glowed blue. Now Kale was fully attentive. He watched as Yuna took her turn. She thought of the balance beam, the perfect, still center. Her body in the memory was poised, every sense alive. The output was pure calm. Blue light. Then Hannah. She pictured the ecosystem, the connections. Understanding without action. Her helmet shone the steadiest blue of all. The emotion completed the circle, stronger than when it started. The other alien students hummed with success. The exercise was perfect. Kale approached the humans after the session. His large, dark eyes studied them. "You have improved," he said, the chime in his voice neutral. "You are beginning to understand. The path to peace is surrender." Jiho met his gaze and gave a small, careful nod. "We are trying, Instructor." It was not surrender. It was the most complex act of translation any of them had ever done. They were not becoming peaceful. They were building a mask that looked like peace. Behind the mask, their minds were as active as ever. This became their secret routine. In every exercise, they would use their private memories. The calm they projected was not Galath calm. It was human focus, human satisfaction, human wonder, filtered through a lens to appear simple. The strain of the constant mental failure vanished. Their headaches went away. They slept better. To Kale, this was proof his training was working. The predator parts were finally being quieted. But the humans knew the truth. The predator parts were not quiet. They were busy. They were hunting for a way to survive in this soft, strangling place. The training was the prey, and they were learning its patterns. One day, the lesson was advanced. They were in a large simulation room. The walls could show any scene. Today, it showed a wide, peaceful meadow under a yellow sun. The goal was environmental empathy. They had to walk through the simulation and use their helmets to amplify the natural peace of the place, to become part of the harmony. The humans walked on the soft, false grass. They did their technique. Yuna focused on the feeling of grass under her feet, matching it to the feeling of a gym mat. Minsu noted the way the light fell like the light in his old workshop. They passed. Then, a small, programmed event occurred. A harmless, furry creature, a simulation, darted from a bush, startled by their presence. It was a test. The correct response was to send a wave of calming assurance to the creature, to soothe its fear. The Galath students did this perfectly. The creature would stop, relax, and go back to eating. When the creature darted out near Hannah, she froze. Her training memory was of watching, not interacting. The creature's fear was a real, sharp signal in the simulation. Her instinct as a biologist was to observe the fear, to understand its cause, not to silence it. For a second, her mask slipped. She felt a spike of her own curiosity, her desire to study. Her helmet flickered red. A tiny zap, sharper than before, hit her temples. The simulated creature scampered away, still afraid. Kale noted it on his datapad. Residual assertiveness, he murmured to himself. Still present, but better. Hannah rubbed her head, frustrated. Later, she told the others. I messed up. The surprise broke my focus. It's not just about focus, Jiho said. It's about context. Our method works when things are calm, when we control the memory. What happens when we're surprised? When there's a real problem to solve. They realized the weakness in their mask. It was good, but it was fragile. Could break under pressure. And if it broke, the system would punish them, and Kale would see their failure again. So they began to train for that, too. In their rooms, they would try to shock each other. A sudden noise, a tap on the shoulder, while practicing their calm memory. They learned to switch to it instantly, like a shield coming up. Min-Soo started thinking of it as an emergency tool, like a fire extinguisher behind glass. You hope you never need it, but you practice breaking the glass fast. They were no longer just students failing a class. They were operatives behind enemy lines, perfecting a cover story. The Citadel, with its gentle lights and soft sounds, had become an environment to be navigated, a puzzle to be solved. And they were solving it. Every blue glow from their helmets was a small victory. They ate together now with quiet smiles. They shared notes on which memories worked best. A bond formed between them, stronger than before. It was the bond of soldiers in a silent war, a war for the right to think their own thoughts. Instructor Kale saw a group finally coming into harmony. He saw relaxed postures and clear helmet readings. He began to think that perhaps humans were not so low potential after all. They were simply slow learners. He had no idea that the harmony he saw was a performance. He did not see the sharp, watchful intelligence behind their eyes. He did not see the quiet, relentless adaptation. He saw a calm lake. He never imagined the deep, coordinated currents moving beneath its still surface. Instructor Kale decided it was time for the final test. The humans had shown progress. Their mask was convincing. To him, it looked like a breakthrough. He needed to see if it would hold under true pressure. He scheduled the capstone simulation, the neutralization drill. The simulation room was called the arena. It was a large, empty white space. The walls could create complex, real-feeling illusions. This was not a peaceful meadow. This was a test of control. The human group stood together. They wore the full psionic helmets, now linked to the arena's systems. The other alien students were not present. This was for the humans only. Kale's voice came from above, calm and clear. This is a conflict resolution scenario. You will enter a simulated urban environment. There are agitated beings within. Your task is to neutralize the conflict. You must not fight. You must use empathic projection. You must calm them. You will project waves of peace so strong that their anger cannot exist. This is the ultimate use of your training. Jiho felt a twist in his stomach. This was different. This was not passing a feeling in a circle. This was an active problem. He glanced at Min-Soo, who gave a tight nod. Their masks would have to hold. Begin, Kale said. The white room vanished. They stood in a narrow, dirty street. The sky was a dull gray. Broken machines littered the ground. The air felt cold. At the end of the street, 3 figures appeared. They were not Galath. They were a rough, digital species designed to look threatening. Their eyes glowed red. They held blunt metal pipes. They radiated a pure, simple emotion. Hostile intent. The training clicked in. The humans, as one, raised their hands in what was meant to be a calming gesture. They focused. They pushed. They pushed the feelings they had practiced. Yuna pushed her centered balance. Min-Soo pushed his rhythmic polishing. Hannah pushed her observing wonder. Jiho pushed his logical order. They projected these feelings as hard as they could toward the agitated figures. Nothing happened. The figures did not calm down. They began to walk forward, their steps heavy. The hostile intent grew stronger, a buzzing, angry pressure against the humans' minds. The empathy is too weak, Kale's voice instructed, a hint of urgency in its chime. You must blend your signals. Create a unified field of calm. Together, the humans tried. They stood close, trying to merge their different kinds of false peace into one signal. But their signals were not built to merge. Yuna's focus was not the same as Hannah's observation. They clashed instead of blending. The helmet sensors whined in confusion. The first figure swung its pipe. It was not a real pipe, but the simulation made it look real. It smashed into a wall next to Jiho's head. Chips of fake stone flew. The shock of it was physical. The loud crash. The close miss. In that moment of shock, the masks shattered. Yuna's mind didn't jump to her calm memory. It jumped to a memory of a missed step on the vault, the ground rushing up. A memory of how to fall, how to tuck, how to roll to minimize damage. Her body shifted stance automatically. Minsu didn't think of wood. He saw the pipe, its shape, its likely weight. He calculated the arc of the next swing. His eyes darted to a broken metal panel on the ground. Potential tool. Hannah's analytical mind stopped trying to be calm. It assessed the three figures, their posture, their coordination, the way they moved as a group. Her brain categorized them not as beings to calm, but as elements of a threatening system. Jiho's logic abandoned the puzzle. It fed him data. One street, one exit behind, three hostiles advancing. Resources, debris, bodies, helmets. Objective, survive. It happened in less than 2 seconds. The mental shift was total and silent. Their separate minds, released from the act of pretending, did not communicate with words. They simply context switched. The problem was redefined. This was no longer an empathy test. This was a threat in a confined space. They did not attack. They adapted. Yuna moved first, not toward the figures, but to the side, drawing the attention of the lead one. Her movement was not aggressive. It was a feint, a distraction. Minsu dropped and rolled, his hand closing around the broken metal panel. He didn't stand up to fight. He stayed low. Jiho saw Yuna's move and Minsu's position. He understood the space being created. He stepped back, not in fear, but to draw the second figure into a specific spot. Hannah watched the third figure, the one hanging back. She saw its eyes track Minsu. She made a short, sharp hissing sound. A human sound, meaningless to the simulation, but a perfect distraction to a predator's brain. The third figure glanced at her. In that glance, Minsu moved. He didn't swing the metal. He shoved it hard against the back of the lead figure's knee, a precise strike to a joint. The figure stumbled. Yuna, seeing it stumble, didn't hit it. She hooked her foot around its ankle and pulled, using its own momentum to drop it to the ground. Jiho, now with the second figure's attention, bent quickly, grabbed a handful of dirt and dust from the simulated ground, and threw it not at its face, but at its feet, kicking up a cloud. The figure hesitated, blinded for a moment. Hannah had already moved. She grabbed a loose wire from a broken machine. As the third figure turned back from her distraction, she looped the wire around the pipe it was holding and yanked, not trying to take the weapon, but to tangle its arms. It was not a fight. It was a dismantling. In 6 seconds, the three figures were on the ground, disoriented, disarmed, and neutralized. No empathic waves were used. No peace was projected. Only simple, devastatingly efficient problem-solving. Then it was over. The street vanished. The white room returned. The humans stood breathing heavily, their hearts pounding. They looked at each other. They saw it in each other's eyes. The sharp, clear light of action, now fading back into shock. They had forgotten the helmets. They had forgotten Kale. Above, in the observation booth, Instructor Kale was not breathing at all. He was staring at his psionic monitors. They had gone wild and then crashed. The data stream was a mess of errors. But what he had seen in the final seconds before the crash, he replayed the neural recordings. He saw 20 human minds, their readings usually so dim and confused, suddenly ignite. Not with anger, not with rage, with a cold, hyper-coordinated complexity. Their brain activity spiked in perfect complementary patterns. It was like watching a single organism with 20 bodies. There was no discussion. There was only action. Perfect, synchronized, predatory action. The simulation hadn't been stopped by him. It had overloaded. It could not compute the variables, the improvised weapons, the tactical feints, the nonverbal coordination. It was not programmed for a response that used the environment as a toolkit. It was programmed for a battle of emotions. The humans had refused to play that game. Kale's silver skin had lost its sheen. His long fingers trembled over the data screen. He looked from the screens to the humans standing silently in the arena below. They looked confused now, worried about their failure. But Kale knew. They had not failed his test. They had broken it completely. Silence filled the observation booth. The only sound was the low hum of the Citadel systems. Instructor Kale stared at the frozen data screens. The humans' neural signatures, usually a messy, faint scribble, were now burned into the display as sharp, interlocking lines. They looked like the teeth of a trap that had just snapped shut. He had to see it again. His hands, now steady with a cold focus, rewound the recording. He zoomed in on the moment the lead figure swung the pipe. He watched Jiho's brain activity. The areas for language and social processing dimmed. The areas for spatial reasoning, geometry, and predictive mapping lit up like a city at night. Jiho wasn't feeling fear. He was calculating angles and escape vectors. He switched to Yuna. Her motor cortex and cerebellum showed explosive activity. Not the broad patterns of panic, but the precise, refined patterns of trained movement. She wasn't trying to calm anyone. Her body was recalling muscle memory for evasion and unbalancing. Minsu's scan was a storm in the regions associated with tool use and structural understanding. He wasn't seeing a weapon, he was seeing leverage, weight, and weak points. Hannah's was the most chilling. Her prefrontal cortex, the seat of observation and analysis, was brilliantly active, while her emotional centers were quiet. She was studying the threats, cataloging them. Individually, it was remarkable. Together, it was impossible. The scans showed a silent conversation, not of words, but of completed actions. As Yuna moved, the parts of Minsu's brain responsible for predicting others' movements fired in perfect sync, anticipating her. When Hannah made her sound, Jiho's planning centers adjusted without a pause. Their minds had formed a network, a single tactical consciousness, and then dissolved it when the threat was gone. Kale leaned back, his own mind reeling. This was not the predator he had warned them about. That was a simple thing: anger, violence, aggression. A loud, hot beast. What he saw was something else. It was a cold, quiet protocol. A dormant subroutine that activated only when the brain's core systems identified an inescapable, immediate threat. When it activated, it did not unleash the beast. It simply repurposed everything. Empathy became threat modeling. Creativity became environmental weaponization. Cooperation became seamless tactical symbiosis. Even their peaceful memories, the balance beam, the polished wood, were just tools the protocol could use. Their earlier success had been a shallow mimicry of this deeper program. The door to the booth slid open. The human named Jiho stood there, his face carefully neutral. "Instructor Kale? The system released us. We assume we failed." Kale looked at him. He looked at the young man's calm eyes, the polite concern on his face. It was a mask again, but a different kind. A social mask. Underneath, Kale now knew, was a mind of terrifying potential, currently at rest. "Failed?" Kale repeated, his chime voice flat. "No, you did not fail." He turned a screen toward Jiho, showing the neural graphs. "Do you know what this is?" Jiho looked. He saw the wild, beautiful complexity. He understood enough. He felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Their secret was out. "It is our response," he said simply. "It is a predator's response," Kale said. But the old judgment was gone from the word. Now it was just a fact. "Is it?" Jiho asked, his voice still quiet. "We did not kill. We did not injure. We did not even strike with intent to harm. We neutralized. We solved the problem presented. With a level of coordinated efficiency this Citadel has never recorded." Kale's calm broke, a ripple of psionic energy in the room that felt like heat. "You were supposed to project peace. And if that does not work?" Jiho asked, meeting his gaze. "What is the next step in Galath doctrine when peace is rejected?" There is no next step, Kale said, his voice rising. Peace is the only step. You either succeed or you are a victim of the conflict. Those are the only outcomes. The two beings stared at each other across a vast, unbridgeable gap. Then, Jiho said slowly, your doctrine makes you prey. It gives you only one tool. We are not predators because we love to hunt. We are what we are because our tool must work. When peace is not an option, we have 1,000 other tools. And we will use the one that fits. Kale's anger faded, replaced by a dawning, awful understanding. He had seen their tool. It was not a club. It was their whole minds, reshaped in an instant for a single purpose. Survive. This protocol, Kale said, pointing to the graph. Is this your true nature? Jiho thought for a long moment. He thought of Earth, of art, of laughter, of helping a friend, of quiet nights and loud music. He thought of the deep fatigue of the early training and the focused energy of their secret practice. No, Jiho said firmly. This is our last nature. It is the final layer. You tried to make us build our home on this layer, to live here always in peace. But it is not a place to live. It is a basement, a shelter. You spent weeks trying to force us to live in our own storm cellar and called us broken because we found it suffocating. Today you accidentally locked us in there, and we showed you what the shelter is for. Kale was silent. The data on the screen seemed to pulse. He had not created monsters. He had not failed to teach lambs. He had taken a species that could build houses, plant gardens, and write symphonies, and had tried to convince them that the only safe place was the bunker underneath. And when he had thrown them into a crisis, they had not gone mad in the bunker. They had simply used the supplies there with flawless, terrifying efficiency. He looked at Jiho, really looked. He did not see an ultimate predator. He saw a tired, smart young man from a world he would never understand, who had just explained a fundamental truth. The Galath saw a universe where peace was the highest state. Humans saw a universe where survival was the first priority, and peace was just one of its many shapes. You must return to your quarters, Kale said, his voice hollow. All of you, do not speak of this. Jiho nodded and left. Alone, Kale began to compile his report. His title was not Training Failure. It was Observations on Human Adaptive Latency, the Survival Protocol. He wrote not as an instructor, but as a discoverer of a dangerous and profound truth. He ended with a recommendation. Do not try to train this. Do not try to trigger it. Understand it. For if you make this protocol the only logical choice, you will see what it truly means to be an ultimate predator. And it will not be their fault. It will be ours. The humans were not taken to their quarters. They were taken to a different part of the Citadel, a place of smooth, seamless walls without windows. It was not a prison. Felt worse. It felt like a waiting room at the edge of the universe. Their personal items were brought to them. The door sealed without a sound. For a day, nothing happened. No one came. The soft, constant light of the Citadel did not change. They sat together, not talking much. The energy from the simulation was gone, replaced by a heavy uncertainty. Minsu finally broke the silence. So, they're deciding what to do with the broken toys. We're not broken, Yuna said, but her voice lacked its usual surety. She was stretching, moving through slow poses, trying to calm the restless energy in her muscles. We showed them something they didn't want to see, Hannah said. She was sitting very still, thinking. A flaw in their perfect system. Jiho nodded. Kale saw it. He wasn't just disappointed. He was scared. For the first time, he was scared of us. The door slid open. Instructor Kale entered. He looked older. The silver sheen of his skin seemed dull. He was not carrying a data pad. He was alone. He looked at the 20 humans. His gaze moved from face to face, as if searching for the monsters in the data. He saw only worried, tired people. The High Council has reviewed the simulation data, Kale said. His voice was still a chime, but it was low, like a distant bell. They have heard my report. There is a debate. What is the debate? Jiho asked, standing up. Whether your species is too dangerous to integrate, Kale said bluntly. Whether the latent protocol you possess makes you a threat to the harmony. Some argue that it is a genetic flaw, that you should be returned to your world, with the Citadel's location erased from your memories, for the safety of all. A cold feeling settled in the room. To be sent back, minds wiped, labeled as flawed? It was a quiet, polite kind of death. And the other side of the debate? Hannah asked. Kale was silent for a long moment. There is no other side. Only a proposition, based on my observations. He stepped further into the room. I told them you are not a failed peaceful species. You are a successful adaptive one. Your protocol is not a choice. It is a last resort. You do not seek conflict. You seek to solve it by any means your context demands. The Council does not understand this. They see only the effect. They do not see the cause. Minsu crossed his arms. So what's the proposition? That I ask you, Kale said, focusing on Jiho. Directly. Why? When the simulation attacked, why did you not try harder to project peace? Why did you switch to that? Jiho took a deep breath. He thought of Kale's words from the booth. You either succeed or you are a victim. He chose simple words. Because you told us we only had one tool, Jiho said. And when that tool was clearly not working, you gave us no other option. So we used what we had left. Ourselves. But you used violence, Kale insisted, the teacher in him still clinging to the lesson. Did we? Yuna spoke up. Her voice was clear. We did not attack them. We stopped them from attacking us. There is a difference. It is a difference the Galath do not have, Kale said, and for the first time it sounded like an admission. To us, to interfere with another's action with force is one thing. It is violence. It is all the same. Then your definitions are wrong, Hannah said, her scientific mind engaging. A doctor setting a broken bone uses force. A person pulling another from a crashing vehicle uses force. It is not violence. It is intervention. The intent and the outcome define the action. Kale stared at her, his large eyes unblinking. The concept was foreign, almost poisonous. To judge an action by its outcome, not its pure form? Jiho stepped forward, his hands open. Instructor, you tried to make us pray. You tried to make us believe that if our one tool failed, we should just accept whatever happened next. You tried to breed the will to survive out of us, and you called that peace. But that isn't peace. That is surrender. And humans, we are very bad at surrendering. The words hung in the quiet room. Kale looked from one determined human face to another. He did not see the cold, coordinated predator from the scans. He saw a fierce, unified refusal. A refusal to be defined as victims. A refusal to have their last line of defense labeled as a flaw. You are saying, Kale said slowly, that we created the threat. By making a scenario where your only approved response was impossible, we forced your protocol to activate. Yes. All the humans seemed to say without speaking. Kale turned and walked to the wall. He placed a long-fingered hand against its smooth surface. The Council will not understand this. They will say the protocol itself is the danger. That it must be removed. Can it be removed? Minsu asked, a hard edge in his voice. Kale looked back at them, a true sorrow in his eyes. To remove it would require rewiring the most fundamental layers of your cognition. It would not leave you peaceful. It would leave you hollow, broken. You would not be human anymore. The finality of it was clear. The Galath could fix them, destroying what they were. Or they could send them away, a failed experiment. So that's it, Yuna said, her shoulders slumping. Not yet, Kale said. He straightened his posture. A decision had formed in him. I will tell the Council they are wrong. I will tell them that humanity is not a danger to the harmony. I will tell them that they are, instead, its missing piece. A piece we have never needed before, and thus never understood. The humans watched him, confused. You asked what the other side of the debate was, Kale said. There is none. So I will create one. I will propose a new designation. Not as students. Not as citizens. But as sentinels. You will not live in the peaceful core worlds. You will be given a ship. You will go to the silent, wild, dangerous edges of the galaxy where our peace does not reach, and where other, less careful species might stir up chaos. You will be the ones who go there, not to conquer, but to ensure that the chaos does not come here. He looked at their shocked faces. You said you are not predators. You are survivors. So survive, out there. And in doing so, protect the peace you do not quite fit. It is the only logic the Council might accept. It is the only context where your nature is not a flaw, but a function. He left them then, the door sealing shut again. The humans stood in the silent room, the weight of his words settling on them. They were not being sent home. They were being sent to the frontier. They were being given a purpose that, for the first time, did not ask them to pretend to be something they were not. It was not freedom. It was a duty that fit them like a key in a lock. A purpose that understood, finally, what they were. The ship was not a Galath vessel. It did not have smooth curves or soft light. It was called the Unyielding. It was built by a different species, one that understood solid walls and strong engines. It was all hard angles, gray metal, and clear, bright light. To the humans, it felt honest. They stood on the docking bay floor, looking up at it. They wore simple, durable suits, not the soft gray robes of the Citadel. Their few personal belongings were already on board. There were no ceremonies, no goodbyes from other students. Instructor Kale was the only one to see them off. He looked at the ship, then at the 20 humans gathered before him. The quiet, tired group he had first met was gone. They stood differently now. There was a calm readiness in them, like coiled springs at rest. The Council agreed, Kale said, his voice barely a chime. Not because they understand, because they are afraid, and because my report showed them a use for their fear. You are an experiment. The Sentinel Project. Jiho nodded. We understand. Do you? Kale asked, his dark eyes searching Jiho's face. Your mission is to patrol the frontier, to observe, to report. If you encounter a threat to the harmony, you are to assess it. You have a wide range of permission in how you manage it. The only rule is that you do not bring war back to the peaceful worlds. Minsu almost smiled. It was a mechanic's brief. Fix the problem, don't break anything else. We can work with that, Yuna said. Kale handed Jiho a small data crystal. These are your coordinates. First stop is a star system on the edge of charted space. There are strange energy signals. The Galath would not go. It is undignified to be too curious about noise. He paused. For you, it is a start. Hannah took the crystal, her eyes already alight with the thought of new data. Real data from an unknown place. Kale took a step back. He was releasing them. He was putting the dangerous, misunderstood thing into a box and pointing it away from his home. He should have felt relief. He felt a strange loss. You turned our training into a lie, Kale said, not as an accusation, but a fact. We survived it, Jiho replied. Yes, Kale said. You did. He gave a final, slow nod, a Galath gesture of respect. Then he turned and walked away, his long shadow stretching behind him on the clean floor. He did not look back. The humans watched him go. Then, as one, they turned and walked up the ramp into the Unyielding. The hatch closed with a solid, satisfying thud. Inside, the ship smelled of metal and clean air. The lights were bright. The bridge had visible controls, screens, and physical buttons. Minsu ran a hand over the pilot's console and let out a long breath. Now this, he said, I can work with. They took their positions. Jiho sat in the command chair. Felt neither grand nor comfortable. Felt correct. Yuna took the helm, her fingers dancing over the controls with a gymnast's precision. Hannah settled at the science station. Minsu stood by engineering, monitoring the systems coming to life. All systems are green, Minsu reported. Power is at full, Yuna confirmed. Course is laid in, Hannah said, slotting the crystal. Jiho looked at the main viewer. It showed the inside of the Citadel docking bay. A perfect, peaceful, suffocating world. Take us out, Una. The engines hummed, a deep, physical vibration they could feel in their bones. The unyielding moved forward, slipping through the energy field of the bay and into the open space beyond. On the viewer, the citadel shrank. It became a beautiful, intricate jewel hanging in the dark. A place that had tried to soften their edges and had instead reminded them they had edges for a reason. Then Una pressed the control. The stars on the viewer streaked into lines of light. The ship jumped. The gray interior of the ship was silent for a moment, just the steady hum of the drive. Minsu broke the silence. So, we're not citizens. We're not students. We're sentinels. We're us, Hannah said, looking at her new screens full of alien data. Finally, Una leaned back in her chair, a real, relaxed smile on her face for the first time in months. No more pretending to be a calm pool. Jiho watched the streaking stars on the viewer. He thought of Kale's fear and the Council's cold logic. They saw humans as a weapon they had reluctantly pointed away. They did not see the truth. They were not a weapon. A weapon has only one purpose. They were a tool. Complex, adaptable tool. And for the first time since leaving Earth, they were in the hands of the right users. Themselves. The galaxy ahead was vast and unknown. It contained wonders and terrors. The peaceful Galath would never see most of it. They would stay in their soft, safe light. The humans would go into the dark, quiet edges. They would not go to conquer or to teach. They would go to observe, to understand. And if something in that darkness ever looked at the peaceful heart of the galaxy and thought it looked like easy prey, the humans would be there. Not as warriors, not as predators, as a reminder that some things are not prey, that some things have a last, final layer, and that survival is the first and oldest truth. The unyielding flew on. Behind them, the harmony slept in its gentle light. Ahead, the unknown waited. And on the bridge the humans were, at last, not at peace. They were ready, and for them that was better.